The Zorati were a race beyond comprehension. Their civilization had existed for eons, their minds capable of feats that seemed like magic to those who encountered them. Telepathy, telekinesis, the manipulation of time itself, nothing was beyond their reach. They had conquered countless worlds, subjugated civilizations, and consumed the psychic energy of billions. They had never met a species capable of resisting their control. Until they found Earth. The Zorati had believed Earth to be a primitive world, populated by unintelligent beings, easily subdued with their advanced psychic technologies. But when their probes entered Earth's atmosphere, they discovered something strange, a psychic resistance unlike anything they had encountered before. Initially, the Zorati attributed it to a fluke, a brief anomaly that could be ignored. However, as they began to establish contact with humanity, it became clear that there was something different about this world. At first, it was subtle. Their psychic probes touched the minds of humans, trying to scan and manipulate their thoughts. But when they encountered the minds of Earth's inhabitants, they were met with unexpected resistance. Where the minds of other species had been easily bent to the Zorati will, humans' thoughts were shielded by a strange, almost tangible barrier. It wasn't just resistance. It was as if Earth's inhabitants possessed a natural psychic defense, an instinctual protection against intrusion. Curious and confident in their superiority, the Zorati pressed further. They sought to unravel this defense, to understand how humans could resist their power. And that's when they began to uncover the depths of the human mind. As the Zorati probed deeper, they began to see fragments of memories, dreams, and emotions, raw, primal, and unrefined. But what they didn't expect to find were the nightmarish entities lurking within. These were not memories or simple fears. They were living, breathing horrors that seemed to have taken root in the very fabric of humanity's subconscious. The Zorati thought they could manipulate these fears, control them, use them to break the human's defenses. But they underestimated the darkness hidden in the human psyche. At first, the Zorati were merely intrigued. They had encountered strange psychic phenomena in the past, but nothing of this magnitude. The nightmares were more vivid, more intense, more alive than anything they had ever seen. They began to believe they could harness this power, to turn these monstrous manifestations into weapons. But as they probed deeper into the minds of humans, they soon realized that the nightmare entities were not under their control. They were alive, and they were waking up. The horrors began to break free. One by one, the nightmares took form, twisting and contorting from the deepest, darkest corners of human consciousness. They emerged as grotesque, physical beings, born of fear and desperation, brought into existence by the Zorati's psychic interference. The first to manifest was a towering, shadowy figure, its eyes glowing with an unnatural, malicious light. It was the embodiment of terror itself, a creature born of the human fear of the unknown. It was followed by others, each one more horrific than the last, a grotesque, writhing mass of tentacles and fangs, the manifestation of humanity's fear of being devoured, a monstrous humanoid, faceless and silent, driven by the fear of being watched, and creatures that shifted between forms, their bodies constantly changing, representing the fear of loss of control. As these nightmares materialized within the Zorati ship, they began to hunt. The Zorati, who had once prided themselves on their psychic abilities, were now helpless in the face of these manifestations. The entities attacked with a primal rage, tearing through the ship's walls, hunting down the invaders with savage intent. The Zorati tried to use their psychic abilities to fight back, but their powers had no effect on the creatures. They were no longer mere projections of the mind. They were real, physical beings, capable of warping reality around them. The Zorati, once conquerors of countless worlds, were now the hunted. Desperation set in, as the invaders realized that they had awoken something far darker than they had anticipated. These were not mere nightmares. They were the living, breathing manifestations of humanity's collective fears. They were unstoppable forces, driven by the primal instinct to survive, to destroy, to consume. In a panic, the Zorati attempted to retreat, but it was too late. The creatures had already infiltrated every corner of their ship, their very presence warping the space around them. The Zorati could feel their minds being assaulted by the horrors they had unleashed. The psychic defenses they had relied on for millennia now faltered in the face of pure, raw terror. The creatures tore through the ship, leaving destruction in their wake. They hunted the Zorati with unrelenting force, their every movement a manifestation of the darkest corners of human consciousness. The invaders realized that they were not facing a species they could easily conquer. They were facing something far worse, something they could never have imagined. The nightmares were not just weapons, they were a force of nature, born from the depths of the human mind, fueled by the collective fears of every human being alive. As the Zordi ship descended into chaos, the aliens began to understand the true nature of their mistake. They had thought they could manipulate humanity's fears. But in doing so, they had awakened something far beyond their control. The Zordi had unwittingly tapped into the darkest power in the universe, the power of fear itself. The last surviving Zorati, now broken and hunted, realized that they would never leave Earth alive. The nightmares were everywhere, and there was nowhere to hide. The ship, once a symbol of their power and conquest, had become their tomb, a place where they had come to conquer, but where they would instead be consumed by the very fear they had sought to manipulate. The Zorati had underestimated humanity. They had thought humans were weak, primitive creatures, but they had awakened something far more terrifying than they could ever comprehend. The human mind, with all its fears and nightmares, had become their ultimate weapon, and the horrors they had unleashed would continue to hunt them until the very end. And so the ship, once a symbol of the Zorati's might, became a tomb in the vast emptiness of space, haunted by the nightmares of humanity's subconscious, a graveyard for those who dared to invade the forgotten depths of the human mind.